And what is important for us is how the Committee of Industrial Organizations became the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Now, the CIO was born out of a fundamental dispute within the U.S. labor movement over whether and how to organize immigrant workers. And those who favored craft unionisms believed that the most effective way to represent workers was to defend the advantages that they had secured through their skills. Craft unionists were opposed to organizing workers on an industrial basis. So let's appreciate again the American Federation of Labor leadership treated the CIO, the Committee on Industrial Organizations, as an enemy from the outset, refusing to deal with it and demanding that it dissolve. And primarily is because the CIO reached out to the immigrant. The CIO reached out to the industrial worker, the unskilled worker. The AFL-CIO's opposition to the CIO, however, only increased the stature of the CIO and John Lewis of the United Mine Workers in the eyes of those industrial workers who were keen on organizing and were disillusioned by the American Federation of Labor's ineffective performance. Now, Lewis continued to denounce the AFL-CIO's policies while the CIO offered organizing support to workers in the rubber industry who went out on strike and formed the Steelworkers Organizing Committee. And they did that in defiance of all of the craft divisions that the AFL had required in past organizing efforts in 1936. So, students, the first major industrial revolution to be chartered by the CIO on November 16, 1938, was the United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America, also called the UE. And the UE today is one of the most important and strongest unions in the telecommunications industry. The subsequent explosive growth of the UE was instrumental for the survival in the early days of the CIO, the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Then the sit-down strikes and the Memorial Day massacres led to the popularity of the CIO. But the CIO was very, very important because it represented previously excluded groups. Now people of color and women are going to join en masse. Blacks, immigrants, Mexicans, and women. So, without the rank and file disruption and the eventual organizing tactics institutionalized by the CIO, we would not have what is known as the Fair Labor Standards Act today. And the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 is a federal statute of the United States. And the Fair Labor Standards Act established a national minimum wage. It guaranteed time and a half for overtime in certain jobs, and it prohibited most employment of minors in oppressive child labor. This was a term that is defined in the statute. And it applies to employees that are employees who are engaged in interstate commerce or are employed by an enterprise engaged in commerce or in the production of goods for commerce, unless the employer can claim an exemption from coverage. But basically what the Fair Labor Standards Act, the ultimate message to the working American, to the immigrant worker, to the first generation of immigrants, the ultimate message is it's not your fault that you are poor. But on May 26, 1938, a committee is going to be formed. It was established as a special investigating committee. It will be known as the House Committee on Un-American Activities. It was reorganized from its previous incarnations as the Fish Committee and the McCormick-Dickstein Committee, but it was designed, the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, to investigate allegedly disloyalty and subversive activities on the part of private citizens, public employees, and those organizations suspected of having communist or fascist ties. And this committee is very important because it was in response to events that were occurring in Europe. And the committee would work for the next 20 years to undermine the organizing activities of union leaders, of immigrants, of workers, of immigrant workers, and they would work to deport some American citizens whose loyalty was called into question. This particular committee eventually is going to influence the passage of what will be known as the Smith Act of 1940. And the committee's importance was reinforced by the passage of the Smith Act. And the Alien Registration Act, or Smith Act of 1940, is a United States federal statute that set criminal penalties for advocating the overthrow of the U.S. government and required all non-citizen adult residents to register with the government. The act is best known for its use against political organizations and figures, with approximately 215 Americans indicted under the terms of the legislation, including alleged communists, Trotskyists, and fascists. Luisa Moreno, whom we just covered previously, as an immigrant Guatemalan woman, worker, she will be deported under the provisions of this act. So, students, I have shared with you that this particular presentation would cover the Bracero program,